Now we're going to continue with the pants here with our character, and I went and looked for a couple of references. We can have very baggy pants like this ones, we can have more like traditional. Actually, this ones look very similar to jeans, just a different fabric of course, but I really like this ones right here, where we have a little bit of a loose effect and then it goes really tight towards the ankle, because eventually we're going to have the boots, and usually these things right here are either going to be inside the boots or, like in this case, outside of the boots. So I think it gives a nice like change on the patterns and on the materials. So yeah, this is what we're gonna do. I was also checking this one out right here. Look at this. And as we mentioned before, the shirt is gonna be tucked in inside of the pants. So that's why we're gonna need to use layers. So let's jump straight into our connection here, our construction. I'm gonna go here to marbles, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the shoes. The shoes are just meshes, and you can at any point, where is it? You can reduce the elements right here. Delete, right click, and just delete hair shoes. There we go. So right click, delete hair shoes. Perfect. So we don't delete this here, unless you want to delete it, of course. I actually think I am going to delete it, to be honest. And the reason why I'm going to delete it is because the mask and everything else will have a little bit of an issue with that volume right there. So we're going to keep it very simple. You can see that this guy is indeed like a little bit above the ground, but that could eventually be helpful if we want to model or if we do the boots on a different software, right? Now over here, we can grab the whole shirt. All of these things are shirt related. Let's bring them over here. I'm gonna grab this one, Control K to unfreeze it, and I'm actually gonna unstrengthen it. So right click and unstrengthen, and if we simulate, you're gonna get like it should look very similar. Now the only thing that you might see here, this blue line, that means that we're using layers. Unfortunately, there is no way to turn it off. I've messaged Marvelous to tell them like, hey, it would be nice if we could just turn it off for visualization purposes, but that's because of the layer system that we have right here. So since we are using layers, we're gonna see those little elements right there. So I'm gonna grab this guy right here, point it over here, and then Control K everything, and then right click, and we are going to hide them. Where is the hide button right here? There is a way, there we go. So hide 3D pattern, Shift Q is the shortcut. I don't use the shortcut, to be honest. And the pattern's still gonna be there, but it's not gonna be affecting because it's frozen, and that way we can focus on the pants a little bit better. Now, the pants are relatively simple. If we, for instance, just double click this one right here and we say add, we can hit OK, and you're gonna see that we're gonna have this like pants pattern right here. And it's perfectly valid to do this, to import one of the assets to start working from there. What I like about this pattern is the fact that we have this sort of like U shape on the crotch area that gives us a little bit more breathing area both on the front and on the back of the character. So pants are not gonna be looking as like intense or as bad, right? Now, if we of course simulate, one of the things that might happen here is that it's gonna fall down. And the reason why this thing is gonna be falling down is because there's no belt. There's nothing holding this thing up. But I don't want to be using the belt, the actual belt that we have just yet. So there's another way in which we can work with this guys right here. And that is by freezing specific parts of the asset or garment. So I'm gonna grab all of this guys right here. I'm gonna right click, and there's an option here that says partial freeze, okay? So I'm gonna say select all freeze. Oh, not that one, sorry. We're gonna grab the whole thing right here. There's a tool, where is it? There we go. Select a mesh brush, this one right here. And we're gonna be able to paint, as you can see, a little bit of a band around our character. And this selection that we're painting, you can press Alt to add to the selection. This selection that we're painting, we can now say right click and we can say freeze. There we go. So what that will do now is if I simulate this thing, that element's going to be completely frozen. Now see this thing's jumping in and out. That's because they're competing against the shirt on the other element. So even though we're not seeing the shirts right here, the pants are competing against them. One thing we can do is just unfreeze them or just like visualize them again. So I'm just going to go, let's go over here and then Shift Q. There we go. And then Control K to unfreeze. And one of the things that I'm going to do, of course, is I'm going to grab the pants and I'm going to set the pants to layer 1. There we go. Now, if we simulate, the pants should be, as you can see, jumping to the front of the character, and the shirt's going to be going on the inside of the character. Look at that. So, not bad, right? There we go. We can even grab the fabric pants right here and apply the sort of like cotton effect that we have right here. Now, technically, we do have enough like information or enough like pressure on the belt to hold the pants here, but I don't like it. So we're gonna do a couple of changes here. So the first change I want to do is I want to add, again, as we saw here in the reference, this sort of effect where right below the knee, the pants compress quite a bit more, and we get a little bit more of a fluffy sort of like loose effect over on the top. So we're gonna go to this lines right here. I'm going to create an internal polygon line from, yeah, roughly that point right there to this point right there, and hit enter. Now, sometimes when we create lines inside of our patterns, it might look like they're actually touching the edge, but they're not. And it's very important that we always make sure that they do touch the edge, because this is the way in which we're going to make sure that it's actually cutting through the whole element. You probably remember that we got a warning a couple of videos ago. So right click, and before we do a cut and sew, I'm going to do this option called extend, trim, and add point to pattern outline. It's kind of like extruding the line to the edges and making sure that it touches the line. We're going to be using this a little bit later for another thing that I want to show you. So there we go. Now that we have that extended and the point created, we can right click and do cut and sew. And as you can see, we're going to get the different band right there. Now, of course, we need to find the exact same point, or as close as possible, on this other side right here. If we check this line, you're going to see that it's 311.4. But thankfully, if we go over here to internal polygon line, there is a way, as you can see, to match the other point. That's why the point was so important, because without that point, it was going to be a little bit difficult to find the exact situation. So right click, and we again extend, trim, and add point to pattern outline. Right click, and we cut and sew. It's a little bit higher than what I was expecting. It's, again, not the end of the world, because we can switch a couple of things around, but I'm a little bit curious onto why that is. Technically, they should be pretty symmetrical. Okay, if it's high, then what I'm going to do here makes a little bit more sense, right? Is we're going to change this internal polygon line, and we're going to snap ourselves to that point right there. Let's try that around. Enter. Yeah, that's way better. And now, again, we select the line, right-click, extend, trim, and add point, and then cut and sew. Perfect. As you can see, that's way more like natural. So there we go. If we simulate, things are going to be falling exactly as expected. Now, what I want to do is I want to make this new lines right here a little bit looser. Hey, these guys are falling down. Let's stop this right there. These guys are falling down. So let's go back here. I'm going to just grab these two elements, or these four patterns right here. And let's again go to the paint mode. And we're just going to... Remember, with Alt, we add to the selection. So you rotate the camera and add to the selection. And we want to freeze this area right there. There we go. Right click and freeze. It lost that freeze information because we cutted the element. And when we cut, it just like forgets that sort of like effect. So there you go. Now what we're going to do, of course, is we are going to make these things a little bit smaller. So I'm going to select this guy and this guy, and we're going to scale them in. So let's do it separately. Let's scale this in a little bit like this, and then this one a little bit like this. The height should be the exact same, but as you can see, that's going to give me a smaller, nicer fit right here. It's really hugging the surface there on the knee. I'm also going to go to this pattern outline here on the bottom part. Double click on the center point, remember, to change the pivot point there so that we get a more sort of like uniform look. And do the same thing here, double click there, and we go in. And there we go. Now, as you can see, we get a very like form-fitting shape on that lower part of the pants. Now, how can we make this thing? Oh, here, there we go. How can we make this thing look a little bit looser on this area right here? And the answer is, of course, we need more volume on this area. Remember, more fabric, more volume, more wrinkles. So one of the ways in which we can do that is, again, by going to this point right here. Oh, to that one, double click here, the center point, and then expanding this out. Like that. And I'm going to go and do the same thing on this one. Double click on the center point and expand this out. Now, as you can see, there's extra fabric on that area. And if we do the simulation, we're going to start getting this very nice effects, these very nice wrinkles on the bottom part of the pants. Now, if you want a lot of wrinkles, we're going to need a lot of fabric. Remember that these guys right here, these are curvatures. So one thing that we can do is we can right click, go to this option right here and go to edit curvature. And we can change the curvature around. See that? Make them really kind of like a bell curve or bell shape. and that is going to add more fabric as well. In this case, the fabric is going to be added on this side right here. But you can see that when we simulate the cloth, we're going to get this sort of like puffy pants on the top right here. If you don't want puffy pants on the top and you only want them to be on the bottom, then again, we need to change the curvature here and make sure that we only have more volume on this like underside area than on the top. So let's push this in a little bit right there. There we go. So you can see now they're going to look way straighter over here, and then we're going to start getting the puffiness over here. You can of course go to this option, add a point or spline. If we add a point right here, for instance, and then we transform that point, we can push that point out to get that sort of like again bell shape or bell curve that we want without actually affecting the top part of the element. So let's add another point right there. And we're going to transform this point and push it out. So you can see we get this very like open-ended pants here on the top. And in order to avoid having that sort of like spike on the cloth, I'm going to right click and we're going to convert to curve point. And that will make it a curvature now. There we go. So now when we simulate, in this case on the front only, we're going to get that sort of like a round shape. If we want this to look a lot nicer, we definitely need to grab this elements right here and also add that sort of curvature on this side so that they match as closely as possible. In this case, we're just going for what looks as good as possible. So we're going to add 2 points right there, and then we're going to transform those points, push them out, and then convert to curve points and convert to curve points. Now this one looks nicer. This one looks like a pinch right there. How can we change this? Remember that over here, we can edit the curve points. We got all of these guys right here, and we can just start like tweaking them around. They get a little bit softer. I believe we can also delete some of these points. So if you have too many curve points, you can delete them. They're kind of like vectors. So there we go. As you can see, we get a nicer shape right there for our pants. Now, if we simulate, of course, we're going to get this very nice or like baggy pants on the character, and our like general effect is going to be looking quite nice. The pants again are falling down. Why? Because anytime you modify certain things about pattern, the freeze information is going to just kind of like forget about that. So another thing that we can do here is we could try to do an internal line on the belt and sew this thing to the internal line so that the belt is always holding the character. I think that's a good option in this case. So I'm going to go to the belt right here. Actually, now let's just freeze it, to be honest. Because that's going to just complicate more things, and we still have things to like layer on top of the character. So I don't want to make a big mess out of this thing. One thing we could try to do is we could try adding a little bit of elastic thing to this element, or even some weft and warp. So if we reduce this to 80 and 80, as you guys know, this will hug the surface a lot closer. It's going to contract a little bit more, but now you can see that the contraction is not really helping in this case. So let's go back. Let's try elastic again. 80% elastic. I feel like it's a good ratio. And let's see if that. Nope, that's way too much as well. Okay, so in this particular case, then I think just freezing the elements is going to be the best option. So, but before I freeze them, I do feel like this thing is a little bit too open. So I'm going to go to the edit curvature option. Make them a little bit smaller on this side and on this side. Careful this one. Let's remove the elastic. There we go. And there we go. So as you can see, we got this very nice like fluffy pants there on the bottom side. If you want to have even more, like this thing's falling a little bit more, another thing that we can do is we can move or make them a little bit longer. Okay, because this guy's right here, we can even like freeze them. I'm gonna move them down, and then if we go to this patterns right here and we move them down, what's gonna happen is we're gonna have more fabric there on the bottom, and as you can see, we're gonna get a nicer, more like fluffy effect right there. Now, I know some of you might be worrying a little bit about like retopology and things like that for game assets. We're not gonna be going over that, but believe me, this is easy. Pants and the arms and all of those stuff, even like the chest area, it's relatively easy to fix. Like you don't need to worry too much about it, because once you understand how to properly like capture all of these wrinkles in your retopology, it's really not that big of a deal. So yeah, that's pretty much it for pants, my friends. As you can see, we get a very, very nice like general underwear for the character, like the main shapes. And on top of this thing, we're gonna be having the rest of the garments. On the next video, we're gonna be looking at a very basic kind of like cloth mask. It's not gonna be the mask that's gonna go over the or actually, it's kind of like those diverse masks that they have that just like saves half of the face. I'm going to be showing you some other tricks to make some of these garments look a little bit nicer. So that's it for this one, my friends. Hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next one.